And we just have to choose got it. Okay, so I'm calling the meeting to order.
5:45.
Yes, 5:45, and I'm going to read the information pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information such as instructions and guidelines for remote access by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website at www.yarmouth.mass.us. For the public portion of this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch, listen, and participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner, either by the Zoom link or by dialing into the phone number given or contacting Jane Kane by the following email, jkane@yarmouth.mass.us. And she will be monitoring this email for any comments. And I'll take a roll call vote to accept this method of holding the meeting. George?
Accept.
Myself, I accept. Mary?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
And Will?
Yes.
Thank you. So we will continue. I will make a comment that at this point, Richard has not joined us. He has a family situation, a death in the family, and it may be that they've already had to go to the services. So he being the secretary, I asked Jane if she would take notes on the meeting, and she agreed.
We have a member of the public here.
Oh, well, that's what I was going to say. Do we have someone?
See Stephen?
Oh,
Stephen.
Other than Stephen, I don't think, I shouldn't say that. I apologize. Yes, we have a member of the public here. Well, that would be the next thing, which was public comment. So I was going by, I would have, come to you at that point, Stephen. So I invite you to make any comments if you'd like to at this point.
I am good at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So then the next thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the May 3rd, 2022 meeting. I did not receive any copies of the minutes. I don't think anyone did, and I think we can just postpone them to the next meeting, if everybody's okay with that. Okay.
Mhm.
We don't need to vote for that, do we?
Probably.
All right, so then the first thing on the agenda, which is probably going to take a fair amount of time, hopefully, is the RFQ, RFP language and how we want to spend the monies and whether it should be separate requests for library building program and the community outreach. So Jane did send us template that she was using that came from Orleans. I hope everybody had a chance to look at it. And hopefully you have some comments that you would like to share. Jane, do you want to be the spokesperson on this?
Sure. And the secretary? Oh, sure. So
Yes.
I was lucky to have a nice conversation with Tavi. He shared a lot of documents with me, including a written building program for the Orleans project, which has been in the works, for almost a decade now. He gave me the name of the consultant they used. He thought that consultant provided great services and would highly recommend her. So that's good to have that knowledge. And he also shared with me the RFQ that they drafted when they were looking for their consultant. So I thought that was a good place to start. I took the document and I kind of reworked it minimally until I got to the section on scope of work and then how you would grade your consultants. And that's where I think we need to chat about the scope of work, what we're looking for, and then how we would judge the quality of a potential consultant.
So
So,
is anyone prepared to start?
Do you want me to bring the document up and share my screen? Would that help or not? help?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right,
I happen to have a copy, but that's probably better
know.
for everybody else.
here, let me see if I can do this. What do you see? My
First
email.
page, first page.
You don't see my email?
Yes.
You do see my email. No.
Well, no, we just see the top of the screen as if it were in the email as an attachment.
So this is a lot.
It is.
So, and you're saying that it's pretty much a boilerplate until we get to scope of work? Is that what you're suggesting?
I believe that it is, yes.
Okay, and of the scope of work, I guess my question is there anything that we don't want that's in there?
I don't know.
Here we go.
Well,
The first bullet is a physical assessment of facilities, and isn't that what JRA has already done?
Well,
But
can I
is-
ask a question? Is what's there their language, or have you done anything to their language?
See, the red text would be
Yes.
my,
But in
Okay.
the scope of work, just in the scope of work, you have not done anything to edit it. Is
I
that
didn't
correct?
touch it. Mm-mm.
Okay. So I think we start from there and we decide what is our scope of work and sort of ignore what they've got. Wouldn't you think?
If you'd like, I just thought this would help.
Well, doesn't isn't the scope of work, why would we cut this whole thing out and start all over again?
Well, because we're not asking for the same things.
How do you know?
Because we've done some of it.
We haven't done everything. I think we're going to be able to salvage at least 2 or 3 of these steps.
Well, why don't you tell us which ones you think we should salvage?
Aw, all right. So as I said, review existing physical assessment of the building, I believe has already been done. However, that information is now going on almost 5 years old, and we've had a pandemic in the meantime. So the only thing I would do perhaps is change that and add post-pandemic or with the reflection of 2 years of coronavirus isolation.
Isn't
under
that covered in
consideration.
the as necessary?
Say it again?
Isn't that covered in the as necessary?
I think so.
Yeah, that's what I don't know, how specific you need to be. in a
Well,
certain
it
book.
says review.
Yeah.
Review the existing and then update as necessary, and that's what we need to do.
Okay,
Have done. Yeah,
So basically, they're going to review the JRA report, even if we don't put that title in there. They're going
Right.
to review that.
right,
Is that what we're saying?
right.
yes.
And the
Okay.
next bullet is to gather background information, and those are all the other reports and the other studies
Okay, so we're keeping that?
about the library, the community, and communities in the library's extended service area.
I don't think,
Okay.
I think we've done that. I don't think
But-
they need to research and gather is my point.
Okay,
What if it's a new consultant that doesn't, if it just so happened the JRA applied, they would have this background information, but if it were someone new, would they feel that they needed to know what was done before?
Isn't that in the JRA report, all that history?
no, it's more of this, I think it's more of the statistical analysis that Richard has done. In the first FAQ that had the chart and the size differentials. If you recall, he studied how much people use streaming media versus print versus all that. Again,
You're
it's-
talking about the library building program, right?
yes,
That's what he included in parts of the library building program.
yes.
So anybody coming in would need to, I think,
You know
I
what?
think don't we
just
need to
need to
decide if
review it.
don't we need to decide if we're doing 2 separate RFQs, one for the library building specifically, library building program, and the second for everything else? Or do we not? are we going to attempt to have one person do it all?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, go
Would
ahead.
you- Would you,
What did Orleans have?
they just, they had a consultant, well, you can see here, this, they did this and they wrote their building program, which is the last bullet. A summary table of facility space requirements, that's what JRA has already done. A detailed room by room description. We seem to have already gotten that. But Bill Scott, Linda, remember Bill Scott said that the document that he saw didn't look like a typical building program document.
Well, and I don't know what he saw. And when he divided up, in the meeting that we had, which is further down in the agenda, but we might as well talk about it a little bit. We asked him what he thought was an appropriate division of the $50,000. And he gave a breakdown of, if I can put my hands on it,
10, 30, and 10.
good, 10, 30, and 10. 10 for the building program, I believe, right? Separately.
Yep.
30 for the community outreach,
Focus
And-
groups and things like that.
and the last 10 for sort of other. So he was looking at it as two separate, I think.
Fine. A lot
But-
of the consultants can do both, and a lot of them, you know, maybe you would want two different consultants, and that way we have like a second opinion.
But that also determines how we word it, the scope of work.
I know.
But what, I guess, who makes the decision on what we want to do? Do we make it as a committee, or do you as the library director think that this would be the easiest way to work with a consultant to separate the tasks? Who is that? Mary?
Yeah, this just seems too cumbersome to go through as a committee. And I don't feel that qualified to say what we need and we don't need at this point. Other than I certainly think that marketing or the community outreach is different from the library program.
Okay.
So I don't see them together. But I mean, this document overwhelms me. I don't know how much of this, it seems like some of this we already have, but all of it might need to be updated because of time and circumstance. I just don't know. I don't feel a committee can go through this.
I agree. I agree
Fine,
completely.
if you want to break it up into small subcommittees who review it, that's great, but I don't want to be the person who writes the scope of work single-handedly.
The other problem is that we're on Zoom. If we could be together, sitting around a table with a printed copy of this in front of us, it would be much quicker and easier.
Well, that's why I gave it to you a week ago, so I mean,
Yeah,
Jane, what did they spend to get all of this?
$27,000,
When
Okay.
was that? How long ago?
2017.
So it's 5
Those are
years.
both really good questions.
5 years. So I don't know typically how much, something like this increases.
Bill? You have to unmute yourself for some reason.
Thank you, Jane. Can we zoom out for a second? Because I feel like we just sort of dove into the deep end of the pool here. And I'd like to go back to the shallow end for a second. What
I
is
think
the
I have to stop sharing. Is that what I have to do?
No,
No.
do you mean
No.
you're not talking about stopping the recording?
Nope, nobody said
No,
that.
just
I'm
in the conversation.
I'm just using a metaphor.
Yep.
I guess what I don't understand is what is the downside of doing all of this and doing it fresh in 2022, 23? Please, somebody tell me the downside.
Time.
Okay, what else?
I don't think that's what I'm saying.
No, no,
My-
that's not, but I asked a specific question. I'm
Yeah.
just, again, I totally agree that this is not the best use of all of our time. And I think that maybe 2 people plus Jane should take it upon themselves as a subcommittee to figure out the scope of work. But that's only under the assumption that this needs to be repackaged. What I'm trying to get at is, if we're trying to make the very best case that we can make to the town, to the public, even to the Yarmouthport Public Library, or sorry, the Yarmouthport Library, why wouldn't we take the approach that we're not just going to we're not just going to use the stuff we did X number of years ago. We've gotten money from the town and we are going to start this thing and do it comprehensively now. And then nobody can come back and say, well, you just took the stuff that you already did and you just sort of brushed it up and da. I'm just presenting that as another possibility, because
don't
I'm trying to think of
disagree.
the outcome that we're trying to get and work backwards, not the other way around.
I don't disagree with you. I guess that's why I asked the question, what did this cost 5 years ago or so? And the answer is, I'm guessing this, to do this today would take the bulk of our money. Yes, no? Are we saying, let's go ahead and spend 30,000 and redo all of this? I don't disagree with you, Will. I just don't know that we have the money to do it. I'm just being realistic.
Right, which of course is a really important factor. But I guess I'm not discounting, and I'm not unappreciative of all the work that has been done by previous consultants in previous times. But I think because of Corona, and I think because of hopefully some new momentum now, including a town meeting for this project, I keep thinking, well, what is the best possible story we can tell the audience that we are about to start telling stories to? And the best possible thing, in my opinion, is to go fresh with the money that we have and to get everything done comprehensively, perhaps by this, or what I see on the screen. But that, again, that's just my opinion. If that isn't what we're going to do, then I would really appreciate it if we didn't spend a ton more time tonight trying to 7 people on a Zoom going through the scope of work, because I agree, as previously stated, it's just not the best use of our time. But that's only, again, under the philosophical discussion and decision about whether this is even an exercise worth doing. I appreciate you guys listening for a second on that.
Will, I absolutely agree with you. I think that we should have the most recent information to present to the public. And I think that doing this all over again is not a bad idea, because it will be the most recent.
Now,
and
that,
I-
by the way, that doesn't mean it's going to be the cheapest. So I understand that. And I'm not just a big fan of spending money to spend money, but I am trying to think about the end game here. And I'm trying to think about, you know, the professionalism and the packaging of all of this. And to me, this feels like an opportunity to do that. But again, I am one person on a committee, so ultimately it's not really up to me.
Well, I support that completely.
I do.
So having said that, who is likely to be willing to work on it with Jane?
Isn't this what we're hiring someone to do?
We are writing a scope of work and telling that person that we're hiring what we want them to do. That's what this section is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jane. And I don't interpret it as something that is, we're using the old stuff. We're trying to determine what the wording should be so that that person that submits their application to do this work knows what we're expecting them to do, and it's in writing, and we can hold them to it. That's
but
all.
Yes, but to clarify, what I mean by saying old stuff is that when you decide to eliminate or delete pieces of the scope of work, because we've already done that, quote unquote, that's the old stuff. And what George and I are trying to say is
Yes,
that may
I
not
agree.
be the best thing for us down the road.
And
Right.
I think it's just determining whether the wording that Orleans used 7 years ago is what we want to use now to get done what we want to be done. And maybe we're saying the same thing, just using slightly different words. And somehow you have to be specific in what you ask the consultant to do. And that's what this section describes. That's all. So we need to make sure that the two things that we were charged in getting done and saying we needed the money for was the library building program, which has to be up to date for any application for a construction grant, and the community outreach program that we don't seem to be able to come up with that kind of a program ourselves. So do we want one consultant to do all of it? Or do we want to put out two separate RFPs, Qs, whatever, and say, this is one for the library building program, the scope of work being very, very small, but everything new. And the second one being the community outreach program. And whatever language we need to use for that. Or do we want to, as they did, put it all together and get one person to do it all and spend the bulk of the money on it? Essentially, that's what the money is for.
Hey, that sounds like a good idea to me. The
What?
more you get, I mean, we've got so much stuff. We're drowning in information, so much so that we can't even handle it. We don't even know what we have, what we don't have.
I don't see where the scope of work gives a plan for community outreach.
It's not spelled out very much, but it does say,
Fifth bullet.
yes, when appropriate, work with the library trustees to facilitate discussions with library users, non-users about how the library facilities affect the quality, use and availability, services and programs. Is that what you think it is, Jane?
I went with the one right above it, which was information gathering, because that's what I think a focus group is. It's like a listening session.
Well, that's in addition then. I think it's the combination.
The two of them, you're right, you're right.
So, I mean, we either use this wording that they've used, if that's what's appropriate in the language of, consultants, then they know what that means. Or we create our own, and maybe like there's only one bullet that contains the same thing. I think that's what, Jane, you were asking to come up with.
Yes.
What are the bullet points and what is the wording? If it's too cumbersome to do it as a group on Zoom, and I think it is very difficult to do something like this, then it needs to be done with a subcommittee, and who is willing to work in a subcommittee with Jane to do this? That's what it comes down to.
Yay, George.
All
I
right,
will,
George?
I am, and the question that I have really is, has this been successful with Orleans at this moment in time?
Yes,
So,
they
why are
gained
we,
momentum and they're moving ahead with finding the
Well-
funding. And by the way, Linda, I looked them up, and they are a municipal library.
well, that's
Well,
great.
Okay,
So, yes, I'm willing to work with you, Jane, but I'm telling you, why would we want to do something that's working? Don't break it if it's not necessary.
Because of pandemic, which has changed library services a great deal, social services in general, the additional need for space for public meetings that are, so people can be 3 feet apart or 6 feet apart.
Fair enough.
Those kind of environmental changes related to the pandemic.
Well, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to work with you, Jane, and let's not,
yes, okay. And Sue, are you
reinvent
willing?
the-
yes,
So Jane, George, and Sue would be a subcommittee to work on just this part
Scope of
of
work.
the scope of work.
okay.
And have we decided that it is going to be one consultant that we're asking to do the whole ball of wax?
I think so.
Based on library consultants who I have known and loved for years, they can do what you ask them to do. They can do focus groups. They can do, coffee and tea meetings with the Rotary, or they can organize that kind of outreach. And they can do the number crunching, the data analysis. Plus, we've got so much already. They just need to update it.
And
So-
you're talking about the library building program.
Mhm.
And we also have to make sure that we do not have an architect that we
Right.
choose.
Right.
So
Yep.
if we get applicants that are all architects,
We won't.
we ran into some problem similar to that with JRA because they are architects, but they did not rewrite the library building program.
Right.
We gave them our draft and that's what they used.
Right,
correct?
right.
Yes. So that's just something we have to be aware of as the applicants come in.
Right.
George,
I want to look at the old RFQ that we did, and I don't know how we fell into a situation where we only garnered interest from architects.
well, I think we also stated, once we interviewed them, that we could not, they could not rewrite. They could not write the library building program for us.
I
They
know,
had
but
to
we
use,
didn't get those kind that I've seen now that did Amesbury and North Dartmouth
I don't recall that we had a lot of responses.
and Orleans. Yeah,
We
we
didn't.
had like 5.
that's not a lot. Yeah.
I want
But-
10 or 12, but
George, did you have something more you wanted to say?
hang
No,
on,
no.
the cleaners are here. I'm gonna close the
I'm-
door instead of holler at them.
I'm assuming that, Jane, you're gonna set up the first meeting and we're gonna sit together and we're just gonna do this. And the question is there wine involved?
You want to do it this week? You want to
Well-
do it this week?
Well, sure, why not?
All right,
So-
Susan, what's good for you? Well, we'll figure it out after this meeting.
Right. And then how will you inform the rest of us as to what you've come up with? Are we going to wait? We want to
Email.
we want to be ready to hit the ground running once, after July 1st. Is that correct?
I'll send you an email before the end of next week.
There you
Well,
go.
no,
There you
yeah.
go.
So that will be, so we'll do this as an informational thing. And then if there are comments to be made by individuals, you make them directly to Jane, not to the group. That okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you think of anything else we need to hash out? Because I think we've made tremendous progress right now. Is everybody comfortable with this?
Yes.
Okay,
Moving on.
moving on. Now if I can just find my agenda. I found it. All right, so the next thing that we talked about a timeline of activities for the rest of 2022 and into 2023. I think that I put it on there, but I'm not quite sure how we can even do that at this point if we don't know what's expected of us by a consultant.
Right.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely
Ask
right.
the Consultant for a tentative timeline.
I'm sorry, Jane, I missed what you said,
We could ask the consultant for a tentative timeline.
which would be written in the scope of work.
Yep.
So therefore, that would be something that we would not address now.
Well, the other factor, of course, is the grant round cycle from the MBLC that we still don't know.
Right, so again, we can't do anything to comply with their timeline because we don't know when they're gonna do it. So does anybody have any other suggestions on a timeline, or should we just have that as something that we'll do once we have a consultant?
I think later on.
There's
Other-
information on relative timelines on the MBLC site, and we could always use that. How long it takes you to get, everything organized. But again, we go back around and around in circles, because that's when there was a planning and design grant round and there was a construction grant round. And as we understand it now, that's all going to meld together.
But they
someday.
have no final plans, because after some piece came out on additional monies available to fund more people on the wait list, I asked if that was going to change anything. I emailed the people at MBLC to see if that was going to change anything with their timeline, and there's no plan yet to change anything. So again, it's, I think they're going to make it almost on the fly. They've got plan A, B, and C going.
You're
so
gonna
it
be so
sounds-
ready.
It sounds as though if the things that we can get ready in advance, we should do them, but as far as timelines, we can't come up with that until they do. Unless it's gonna be privately funded, which it's not. So, can we go on to the next item?
Yes.
All right, so LPC membership, plus we are, according to the, the rule book, we're supposed to, address, the chair, vice chair, secretary positions as of this, just after town meeting, which just happened. I really would like to step down as chair. And I'm looking for someone else to be willing to do it.
Let's ask Richard, he's not here.
Well, you know, right now he's secretary, and it would have to be him saying that he would continue to be secretary or step up, and no one can say that for him.
And also, it's my understanding, Madam Chair, he's been appointed to the Finance Committee of the town of Yarmouth. So I would
Oh, I
argue,
didn't know that.
so I would argue. he does
Well,
not
I
have
think
to
it might be a little premature to say that.
My apologies.
Yeah, and that's why I was not saying it.
Sorry.
That's
misread-
okay.
misread the
Thank you,
room.
Kay.
In the minutes?
I don't know how to handle that. That's why I was not speaking for him.
Sounds like there should
So-
be a discussion with Richard.
Yeah. Well,
Not do this till he's here.
okay, I don't know when that's going to be. Are we waiting till the next meeting, whenever that might be?
Sure.
So no one is willing to step up? Okay. I'll hang on for another meeting, but I'm not promising much more than that as chair.
That's, that's fair.
Okay. We did have a conversation with a prospective member based on your suggestion, Will, with Liz Argo. And
It was
Jane
very
and I-
good.
we had a good conversation. We haven't actually talked between the two of us as to what we thought about the conversation, because it just happened this afternoon around 2:30. But she has not committed to anything, but is very interested and is going to review the documents that are on the website. And see if she has questions, and you know, we'll take it from there.
She has great experience. She has a lot of good skills that the committee could use. It was great.
And I think I would just share, one of the questions that I asked her was, based on the fact that she spoke up at the town meeting, what prompted her to want to participate? And she had a very interesting answer, which I kind of respect for her for, in that if she bothered to speak up and say something as she did, that she should step up. And if she thinks that it's something that should be, you know, worked on and supported in the town, that she should consider being part of the committee to get something done, something along those lines.
Good for her.
I thought that was, I liked that answer from her.
Well, it was a heck of a lot better than the alternative, which could have passed a town meeting.
Exactly. And she got indicated that she didn't think that people were not supporting, but also that they just didn't have quite enough information as to what it was for and what the town would gain from spending that kind of money for it. It just wasn't clear in the listing. And I think everybody was kind of surprised at all the different kinds of things that were in that list, and it was just a different way of doing it. So, but it was a very good conversation, and we'll have more with her. So I'm going to move on to the next thing, field trips by membership. Jane had some suggestion. We were thinking that Jane and I have visited these other libraries, but it might be something that you folks might want to put on your calendar at some point to visit some of these other libraries, just to see what they're like. And again, it would be, as I see it, you'd have to do it on, you know, whatever time worked for you if you wanted to do it. Just to have a sense of what some of these new libraries actually have in them, as opposed to what it would look like as a drawing. Jane, did you want to share the list that you had come up with?
I do, and I can also send it to the group so that you have.
Yes,
the
I
list
think
of
that would
them.
be helpful.
But I started with Norwell and Weymouth, where Linda and I have been, because it was very inspirational and wonderful in a lot of different ways. I went through my notes in terms of what libraries have been on my list of want to go see, want to visit kind of things. And the West Tisbury Library is still on that list. Richard's been there, I believe. Linda, you might have been.
I was there, yes.
But they use some innovative techniques to utilize space in a very good way, and I'm dying to see it. And I would like to go to the vineyard, but again, now it's summer. It's going to have to be after the summer, I imagine. Dartmouth just opened. Well, actually, they opened it in January of 2020, and 6 weeks later closed for the pandemic. But they did a branch renovation, and that's the north branch of Dartmouth. I can get there because my sister's in New Bedford, and that's not that far. But I would love to have somebody come with me if you want to come. If you have not seen the Eastham Library, you really need to take a day trip and visit
Yes.
the Eastham. The candidate who we spoke to today admires the Eastham Library, and she admires what Orleans has done with their space. So those are two libraries I would recommend, knowing full well that Orleans feels that their space needs improvement. The Framingham Library built a branch, and it's called the McAuliffe branch, and that opened right about when I started here in Yarmouth. So that opened back in 2014 and 2015, and I'm dying to see that one. Again, it would be a day trip. It would be fun. And Webster just opened a public library, and they're not a very wealthy town, and their facility was very challenged, but that's a pretty much urban library. I'm not sure that it would really fly on the Cape. The last one, that's the Pièce de Résistance, just opened maybe a couple weeks ago in Medford, 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 and it's the hometown where Bloomberg grew up. So he must have provided some funding for that building because they named it after his parents. But I would think it'd be worth a trip to kind of maybe shoot for the moon, sort of a library project. But again, I imagine that that's going to be a little more urban than what we would do on the Cape. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 libraries that I would recommend we take trips to, and I'll send you the list, and then we can plan.
And
So-
I think even
so
in
then-
an urban library, that might be more the cosmetics on the outside, but the use of space might be very similar to what you would use anywhere, you know. So it would be worth seeing it from that point of view. George, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You didn't. So is my understanding that if we visit, we simply go in, look around? Or do we make a connection with somebody there? Or do we just simply make notes and kind of look around?
You can do either way. I mean, when I go on vacation, I always visit the library in the town where I'm on vacation. However, when Linda and I did Weymouth and Norwell, we made an appointment with each of those directors, and they gave us 2 or 3 good hours of their time and gave us all the backstory information about how things fell apart or worked really well or had to be redone or didn't meet their expectations, or what to be careful for when you're dealing with, you know, the different consultants and architects and owners, project managers and builders and all that stuff. You get a little bit more of an inside track when you make an appointment.
So Jane, is it possible for you not simply to give us a list, but to give us a contact person?
I suppose I'll have my secretary do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put more work on you, but you know, if that's possible, that might be good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Even
It's
just
easy.
the-
I mean,
the
it's all on the web.
And even just the library director's name, that would be a starting point in the other libraries, and they could suggest that you talk with someone else or, you know, make the arrangements, whatever.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
But if anybody's like raring to go, just let me know because I enjoy a good field trip.
Any other comments on what we've already talked about? Okay. And just a brief recap, we had a meeting, I think, after the last committee meeting with Bill Scott, Assistant Town Administrator, Jane and I. And it really was more, it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, so that we would have a chance to talk about sort of our approach in that we were thinking site and get some questions on some of the sites that we had already talked about. But really more from his past experience in projects in different towns and in the methods to use and what to do first. And he had said it several times that he doesn't feel that site is what should be the first thing that you talk to people about, even though we know that people ask, where do you want to put it? That would come in maybe in other public meetings that we had further down. And his correct me if I'm wrong, Jane, but his thrust seemed to be more find out who your support groups are in the town, find out what your constituency is, the people that support what you do, the people that might need other things to be done for them, other groups, and find out who they are. And those different groups in the town would then be part of this community outreach program that a consultant would help us design. Jane, can you think of other things that he mentioned?
No, he did just what you said. He said that at this stage, the location is not as critical as making sure that people know the deficiencies in your building and know what they could have if they had a more modern facility. You know, it's an education campaign that I've been saying for years. We need to do an outreach campaign, that type of movement.
He made some suggestions for certain groups in a community. For instance, maybe families that have children with disabilities that might need certain kinds of programs or certain space to hold certain kinds of programs. He suggested it might be the thought that college students coming home might need a space to do their work during college break. You know, I'm not sure if that's the approach, but that was certainly something not to rule out, that these could be families that could support individual study rooms or small group study rooms and things like that. So he was trying to think of all of the different groups in town that may not be singled out already as people that you wanted to get on board on the project, and try and figure out what those groups are and how to contact them. Anything else, Jane?
Not that I can think of. He does seem to think that, you know, it's like building your story. He thinks of this phase as being very narrative. So I'm going back to how you do marketing, and you tell your story and you talk about what your needs are, and you bring people in to understand how they can make their community better with a better library, right?
And it seems as though these are the kinds of things that we're not going to be doing until after we get some consultant that is guiding us and coming up with a plan. Does that sound right?
It does, and it's also challenged by the fact that we don't have our meeting rooms like really up to speed. You know, they've been used as storage rooms for almost 2 years. And so how do we roll it out? How do we put this communications effort together, given our still kind of confined space?
But it would seem to me that that's the kind of conversations we're going to be having with a consultant, that the consultant is going to be looking at where we are now, how this room has had to be used during COVID to store furniture that you've tried to create space in other rooms. And that's a part of the argument for needing something that isn't designed this way. And you're going to have to hold these meetings somewhere else that has more open space. I think that's just going to happen. So we just have to, I foresee that we're not going to be doing much of any of this until, you know, August or September or next fall. Does that sound?
August or September of this year? I'm thinking it's gonna be later than that.
Well, and so then that's the other thing is, like, what are we doing between now and then?
Well,
Go, please, Mary.
well, one of the things that I feel is that it's hard to get other people involved when we don't, I still have no sense of the support for this to happen from the town,
Right.
from the town itself.
That's a
And-
feasibility
And,
aspect.
I think we can continue to do what we've done, but to go to other groups. I mean, to talk to them about what might happen in 15 years. I mean, is that what we're, I don't know. For me, the concrete thing is that you can't even talk about building something till you know where you're gonna build it. And for me, that is a question that's asked a lot. And for me, that is where we know we have the support of the town because they've dedicated a space for it. And with that, I'm going to share some information. The property on Forest Ave is going to be developed sooner rather than later by the Housing Authority. They are moving forward with an RFP. Now is the time for the town administrator to say what he wants. And he's the one to do it because the town gave them this land. So he needs to sit down and have a little meeting and say, hey, when you guys are developing it, and they're talking about 90 bedrooms, so to speak. So it's going to at least be the size of the complex on 28.
So is that taking the whole 18 acres or have they?
No, it will not take the whole 18 acres. But
Yeah.
again, we need the town to say, hey, Housing Authority, we gave you this space and in your planning, we want a library in there. If he can't do that, or if we don't have that much, I'm not going to anybody else and saying, hey, what do you want? Let's get all excited about this. I mean, because it's bull.
Mary,
Okay, Will.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Will has to leave, so thank you,
I
Will.
will.
And
Thank you
and
all.
if there's anything more, be in
I will.
touch.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Mary, I sympathize with you. I feel the same way. And
Can I say something?
please, Jane.
Mary, there you are. I was reading over an article from based on my search for one of the consultants that we're looking into forming a list of consultants. And the MBLC says that when you go to apply for your construction grant, you have to provide 2 locations that are both.
Of course.
approved. So I mean, so we can say that we want to be on Forest Road, but we need Plan B as well. So we need to keep looking. We need to be open to other locations.
But that is what I expected we were going to have the chance to talk about with Bill Scott. And he would not address it.
Well, again, and with all due respect, how much more time are we going to spend on this if the town is not interested?
They're interested. I mean, at town meeting,
Well, what, by getting a bunch of volunteers to give their time? Show me what else they've done.
it's on the capital plan. They just gave us $50,000.
Do you
Maybe that
know
might-
when the RFP is going to be made public by the Housing Authority?
I don't know. What Mary said to me was, now's the time that the administrator has to step forward. Now's the time, or forever hold your peace.
And are you aware of any timetable of building?
Oh, no. It's, no, they're just starting, but so it could be, I don't know, 2 years, 5
Yeah.
years. I don't know, I'm afraid, but the point is that I need to hear that the town has sat with them and have said, we want a library, we want to carve out a space someday for a library to be here. That's what I want to hear they're willing to do. If they're
Mhm.
not willing to sit down and discuss that at that site, what are we doing?
I would agree with you.
We have said to Assistant Town Administrator that we want to be at the table, that we don't want to lose the ability at this juncture to be under consideration. And we're waiting for a response.
Again,
How long do you wait?
again, I don't know who talks to him. I don't know how it gets, but no one, let me tell you, if I had millions of dollars to give away, I'm not going to give it to some town that hasn't even committed to a site, or some group that doesn't even know where it's going to
I
be.
agree. I agree with
I
you.
mean, site control, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is not going to give us a dime unless we have site control. That they aren't, and nor should they.
So what do you think we should do?
For me,
Do-
I want to hear, I don't know if it's Jane, I don't know who talks to the town it is to say, or maybe it's as you tender your resignation, is to say, here's what needs to happen. We need to see this.
I'm not resigning from the committee.
No, no, no,
I just don't want to be chair.
I hear that. Is to say, here's what needs to be done. We need to hear this is happening.
Is it appropriate for the whole committee to go and have a meeting with the director, the administrator?
In the past, we haven't done that. I'm happy to go. I mean, I will work very hard at keeping my mouth closed until the appropriate time.
Well, how do the others feel? George and Sue, how do you feel about going as a group?
I don't think it could hurt.
I'm fine with that. And I just continue to think about, why are we not thinking about that middle school that's gonna be empty again?
Fine, that can be another site. Then let's hear, then I want a commitment on that. But we're going to lose the opportunity to even be in line for Forest Ave. If the town doesn't say we want some of this, we can't say it. Only the town administrator can.
So the answer is yes, I'll be happy to go with you.
All right, and Sue, so I don't know if that has to be posted somewhere, so we will just have to find out about open meeting law because of, a quorum of the group going together.
You don't have to be posted. You just need a date from Bob and Bill.
Right. And we just need 48 hours time to get it posted. So do you want to give me times that you're available? Do you want to email me with times that you're available to go to meet with the administrator, and then I will ask him? Have any
I
of
would
these
go,
worked?
I would go the other way. I would find out what days he's available and see when we are available.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you're available. Yeah. All right.
I mean, I'm assuming it would be at least a week or so away. I'm having surgery.
I don't know.
So
Yeah.
okay. All
Well,
right.
that's what I'm
It's gonna be
saying.
4th of July before you know it.
Okay, all right. Okay. Again,
Today is Tuesday, so do you prefer not doing anything during this week? You want to move it all to next week? When is your,
yeah,
when are you not available?
I'm not available this week.
But you would be next week?
Yes.
So I won't even ask anytime this week. I will go into next week. That work?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah?
I don't want him to think that we're ganging up on him.
No, I know.
That's
I know.
important.
He's
Right.
a tough cookie. He'll be fine.
Well, and I can also couch it in, we're preparing the RFP and just trying to get, somehow say something that's the reason why we feel we need to talk to him. I mean, how else am I going to do it? If you have other suggestions, I'm open, but that would be the way I would approach it.
I think that's a good approach. And I mean, I don't know him, so it would be nice to just say hello.
Sure, sure.
Yep.
And Mary, I would assume that it would be appropriate to say that we're aware that this RFP is being prepared by the,
Yes.
what group is it? The Affordable
Yarmouth-
Housing
Yarmouth
Committee or,
Housing, isn't it the Housing Authority?
yeah,
But
but
they must
okay.
work with town planner.
No, I think they're a quasi-state organization.
Yeah,
So they
Oh.
work directly with the administrator.
No, they don't, no, they're independent. They're not under, my understanding is they're a quasi-state, not a
State, yes,
town, but a
yes.
quasi-state organization
right.
that the town has some representation on, but they do not answer to the town administrator. His only clout, if you will, would be his strong assertion that it is important to the town that there be some carve out for a library. That's
Well, and this was what we were asking about. We know that there's a restriction for affordable housing on the property. We know that the YHA holds the deed. And this was what we have not been able to get answers on. Can it be rewritten? Can it be adjusted? They've got 18 acres that they have this restriction on. So you have to go through, as I understand it, a legal process to carve out. And I know what you're saying, that he seems to be the only one that could make that arrangement with them. Is it
Correct.
appropriate to, how is it that we know this? I mean, is
Oh,
it
that's fine. It was an open.
public?
meeting.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's a,
it
okay,
was
because,
a meeting such as this, and to which, when I heard it, I said, oh my God, Mary, you know, I'm.
yes, yes,
And she said, Mary, now's the time. Now's the time
Okay.
your group has to.
all right.
All
All right, so we'll aim for sometime next week. I'm not sure exactly which days. And I'll say that I'm going to use that as part of the reason why we need to talk to him at this point. That we're aware that there is a plan being made for housing, and we need to find out if, you know, what the future holds for us.
Right,
Right.
Okay,
right. And again, I think it's fine if there's other options. I just want to hear them. And I think
Yes,
that.
I agree.
And if there's something better, but we went through a process. We looked at a number of sites.
yes,
This was one that rated very high.
Right.
So find that we need to have a backup. I would just like to have one.
right, right. And we've gone through the process and we don't know of any other options.
Correct.
And so, okay. So the next thing is, the next meeting. So we're scheduled to have it the first Tuesday of the month, which would be July 5th. And do you think it's premature to have a meeting? Or do you think we need to have a meeting in July and on July 5th? Especially where this process of doing the RFP is like, you're going to be working on it between now and then. When do you think it would be wise to try to have a meeting?
I think it has a lot to do with what our subcommittee is able to do and what the meeting with the town administrator turns out. If there's substance there, maybe we need to meet. If there's no substance, then maybe not.
Okay, so Jane, before
I'm not gonna be here that week. I'm gonna be on vacation the week of 4th of July.
so it would have to be the following. Anyway,
The week of the
Which
12th.
would be
or
the
week of
12th?
19th.
okay, so we'll say to be decided. And
That's
then
right.
we'll just, based on what we get done and the results of this meeting, then we'll figure out a time for the next meeting. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so unless there's anything else, does anybody have anything else that they want to bring up? I guess, Jane? No? Okay,
Well, I was just gonna tell you that George Bavino was a superstar at Career Day. He went to Matikes, and we had a
Great.
lot of fun. So we were tag teaming as like municipal representatives, how joyful it is to work for the public.
Great.
As
That's
a
great.
librarian or as a teacher who then became a principal. And he was so good with kids, and his son was just wonderful. It was a really great experience to do Career Day. with
That's
him.
great.
It's
Good.
It was a great experience, and interestingly enough, as we were finishing our duty, we were being led by some young lady, and we passed the library of the middle school. And Jane went in, and it happened that my son Mike, who's the principal, was there too. So I went in, and all of a sudden Mike had an idea that perhaps members of the planning board and members of the library board might partner with faculty members in doing a kind of a book. Jane, help me with this, a book
A
talk.
one book one, yeah.
The kids are
No,
doing-
no, no, it's a book, it's summer reading. Now they've changed the way that they've done summer reading for the middle school kids. These are grades 6 and 7. Instead of giving them a list of 12 books and that they pick from, and then have, I don't know how they do it, but they would give them each grade maybe a choice of 4, and then they'd have to pick one, and then they'd have to do a report on it when they got back to school. That's how it's been done. This year, they've asked all of the faculty and the administration to select a title that they would recommend that the child reads, either grade 6 or grade 7. Then they're going to have a day when they come back to school in September or August, but they'll probably have the day in September, where they're going to have a series of discussions all about the different books that all the different kids have read all summer long. That's going to be facilitated by the teacher. So he invited the library to participate in these book discussions, and I'm so excited about it.
That's great.
It's
So if any
fantastic.
of us want to do that, with the kids and the faculty, he would love to have us.
And so
I
the
think that's great.
librarian sent me the link, and they have a whole website all built up for this summer reading program. And you pick a title, then it clicks you onto CLAMS, and you can request the book through the library system. It's amazing. I'm now reading about 6 middle school books.
It's like a giant book group.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
George, remember to talk about that on Thursday, please.
I will. No, I thought about that as well.
Okay.
And
Mary?
Jane, I have an envelope for you.
I need to go.
All right, thank you, Mary.
Bye,
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
Mary.
Bye.
Your
Jane.
surgery.
Jane, I have an envelope for you from my son Mike, came from the school, and in that envelope are thank you notes from the kids.
Oh, stop it.
And they are fantastic. I knew you were away, so I didn't even bother trying to hook up with you, but I'll get that to you on Thursday. Some of them are just unbelievable. One kid wrote to me in Spanish.
Oh, wow.
Bueno.
Just wonderful. So
I think-
wait till you get that envelope. You're gonna be very excited.
I think that's a base that we've got to really develop the
Yes.
working relationship with the schools and the library, because that's going to be a support. Group.
And I have to tell you that we're in a great spot because my son Mike is ready. I keep keeping him up to date on what we're doing.
Thank you.
He said, Dad, tell me what I can do. Tell me what I can do.
I think Carol Woodbury would be in the same boat too, because when I
Yes.
talked with her, just in talking about the possibility of that site behind the
Right,
new school,
Right.
she was very supportive of the idea of, doing something in a library and just, the whole thing. So I think we've got to, build upon that.
Yeah, we've got two people
Very
that are
actively.
really willing to help us. And I don't know what his PTA or PTO is all about, but maybe we should hook into them too.
Yes, I think
Okay.
it would
Well-
be great.
Our youth services librarians have been at schools in Yarmouth now for like 5 and 6 hours at a time, doing 10 sessions of the cheerleading part of introducing summer reading. And they're coming back and they're so engaged with what's going on in the community that things are really looking up, I would say.
That's great. That's
Well,
great to hear.
If we do these little workshops with the kids or book things, we could just drop a little nugget. Wouldn't it be great if you had a brand new library?
Yes, yes,
We go home and say, hey, Mom, Dad, they're talking about a brand new library.
yes, yes.
You know, kind of stuff, it's not us. It's the younger people. It's the younger families with little kids that are gonna
Absolutely.
benefit from this.
Or the teenagers, the families with teenagers that need to,
Absolutely.
you know, a place that it's safe for them to go to. They don't have to be spending a lot of time there. It could be in and out. It could be, you know, back and forth. That's the base that I think we have to work on.
I agree. I
Definitely.
agree.
Yeah,
Definitely.
great. That's good to hear, though, that your son is willing to, you know, get involved in it. And I
He's
think
willing
we
to
would
help in any way that he can.
take him up on that.
I just met the librarian and boy, is she an enthusiastic young woman.
Lovely.
So connecting with the school librarians with us is again another great
Absolutely.
opportunity.
And I think the library board can be, you know, that can be like something that you get on the bandwagon for, to make yourself known as a group too, that you're supportive of this connection.
Right. And as Sue said, I'm gonna bring this up again at our meeting on Thursday.
Yeah,
I'm sure our board is gonna
Well,
just
that-
jump.
I mean, Jane Garvey, I mean, anyway, there's a
Yeah.
lot of teachers and so on the board and they'll be happy.
I think it's great. That would be great. That would be like a first step that even before we get any consultant on board, we can start working with that base of support.
Exactly.
That would be wonderful.
All right.
All righty.
Okay,
Time for dinner.
yes. Thank you,
No.
everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you, Stephen, for joining.
So you have to vote to adjourn.
Oh, that's right. I have to vote
We're
to.
gonna do that. We're gonna do that.
So, George, do you approve
gonna-
of adjourning?
I'm gonna move that we adjourn at this time.
Okay, I agree.
Yes.
Susan, agree.
Second from
Jane?
Sue.
Okay, Jane, you also? Okay,
Yes, please.
so
Yes.
we move to adjourn. All right,
Right.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye now.
everybody. It was great.
Bye.
I hear from you, Jane. Okay, bye.
Yeah.